All right, welcome back, dudes. Check this out. It's a Koenig Arius. This is a top of the line USA made knife, worth around $800. And it's kind of the best money. It's kind of the best knife money can buy. You could argue that, but for the amount of money you're spending, I think this is top of the line. Now you can get fancier materials, more limited run stuff that'll be more expensive. But as far as like the build quality, I think this is pretty much as good as you can get. And it's not the only one that's as good as you can get. There's a few knives that are in the same range, but this is one of them. And kind of talk about it. So this is a Generation 3 Arius. It can actually look down into the inside scale there and see. It says Gen 4 Bio. Not sure what the bio means. Pretty cool how they do that. There's just a hole in the clip and the scale, and you can look down and see that down there. I wonder. Let's see. Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. A little bit. It's a smooth titanium handled version with bronze accents. So we got bronze pivot, backspacer, and hardware. I think all their blades are like this bead blast hella grind with the satin flats. I think they're all like that. I don't know though. This is an absolutely, it's a world renowned knife design. Designed by T.J. Schwartz, who I'm not familiar with, but apparently it's his design. The ergos are fantastic, like really, really good. The way it kind of is thinner here and then swells out here, this thick part kind of sits right in the meat of your hand right here, and it just feels really, really good. There's kind of like a natural thumb spot right here. It's just really nice. The clip, you don't feel at all. It's a hidden screw clip. It's screwed in from the inside. The clip works really good too, actually. At first glance, it kind of looks like it might not, but it does. The lock bar access is really good. They put a little light jimping here on the lock bar. Not so much that it hurts your finger, but just enough to give you a little grip there. The lock bar cut is so thin. Unbelievably thin. Look at that. Obviously, probably done by a wire EDM or something like that. I don't think there's an end mill that small that could cut that. I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, if you look at it compared to some other frame locks here, let's see. What's one that's on the wider side? Here's the Kunwu Padre. I've seen them definitely even wider than this, but this one's pretty wide compared to the Arius, at least. Let's see, what else here? How's the Rosie? Rosie's pretty wide. Pretty freaking wide compared to the Arius. And functionally it doesn't mean anything. But when I see them really thin like this, it's just kind of cool because I like to think about how they could possibly cut that out so accurately and so thinly. This thing really is built super duper well. I mean, just the as soon as you get it in hand and you flick it and you experience it, you can just immediately tell the difference between something like this and, for example, the Kubi Titius, which is kind of the poor man's Arius. I happen to have both here, and actually when we draw to see who gets to keep the Arius, we're going to do a second place, and they're going to get the poor man's Arius. Kind of a cool little double draw here. So these two knives are pretty similar in design, but when you pick them up, you immediately feel the differences in quality. Just immediately. And not all of it can really be put into words accurately. There's things like the smoothness of the action, You know how, the feeling of that detent ball riding on the tang in there as the blade opens and closes. The sound of the lock bar kind of sliding over into position. The roundness of the edges, the overall just kind of finish. Everything's a little bit more crisp. All the lines are a little more crisp on the Arius. The edge, the edge bevel itself is way more consistent on the Arius. The action, the detent's not bad on this Kubi, but it is otherworldly on this Arius. It is unbelievable how this thing fires out. One of the best flipping knives I've ever tried. It is a little lock bar sensitive, so you don't want to put too much pressure on that lock bar when you go to flip it, I mean. But man, this thing flies out with so much force. It's unbelievable. Absolutely cannot fail this thing. And the reverse flick is gnarly. It's I think this detent could even be a little softer and still be excellent. For the reverse flick, at least for me, I have to be kind of towards the bottom of the hole to really get it easily. If I try it at the top, it requires a little muscle on my my middle finger here. But man, is it crisp. Unbelievably crisp detent. Such a good sound when it locks back into. It's a detent so crisp that you can even hear it. Yeah. The clip obviously is a big one. This is just a regular bent clip. This is a milled clip. They did kind of a half floating backspacer here. You can see it's solid up to about here, and then it starts floating for whatever reason. I don't know if you'll really see that. The milling on the inside there's a lot of it. For such a big knife, this is really lightweight. In fact, let's weigh it here. .8 ounces. 5.1. Let's get out a similarly large knife. How about the Padre? It's around the same size. That's heavier, 5.2. Let's see. XM18, 5.7. What else? How about the McNeese Mac 2? That's only 4, but that's quite a bit smaller. See, I think 4.8 is pretty small, pretty light for how big this knife is. Not like insanely light. Obviously, it's not Rosie light. Rosie's much smaller. Rosie's only 3 ounces. Let's do some comparisons between the Rosie and the Arius. I think they're very different knives, but people often kind of wonder and ask which is better, the Arius or the Rosie. I think just because they're both kind of top of the line American made knives. They're in the same weight class here as far as quality and price and all that stuff. If I were to pick between the two, it would be the Rosie, and it only comes down to design. The Rosie is just more my style of knife. I love the size. I like the choke up spot. I like the sliciness of it. It's more of a kind of a nimble, slicey blade, whereas the Arius has more of a little heavier duty working blade. And I don't think many people are doing heavy duty work with their Ariuses. But I feel like that's what it's built for, This is not like a dainty slicer. This is meant for work. You know, with the way you have the finger guard here, back here, you know, the thicker blade stock, the really deep hollow grind. You know, it's not super thin behind the edge either. I think it's, well, let's find out. Yeah, it's about 24 thousandths. 21, 18. So yeah, that's not thin. That's not thin, but you know, it's a very tall, deep hollow grind, so it'll still slice well for sure. But it's not going to be a super slicer. And you know, we'll see all that stuff when we do the cut test. But yeah, the Rosie is just more of my jam. But the build quality is both. I mean, both of these are just excellently made. The Arius is more fall shut. You know, it has a much heavier blade, so that's part of it. The detent, I think they're both just as snappy as one another, but the detent is heavier on the Arius. The reverse flicking action on between the two, I prefer the Rosie, but they're both really fun to flick and flip. This is just more of a heavier feel to it. This is more of a light, kind of nimble flick. The thumb flick, you can do it pretty easily on both. The Arius kind of has a wider portion to the hole up in this corner, allowing you to kind of almost thumb flick off of this edge up here of the hole. Not as easy as the Rosie, but definitely doable. So there you go. There's some comparisons between those two. So, cannot wait to cut with this thing. I really can't. I don't think I've ever seen a cut test with an Arius. I'm sure there's some out there. I've never come across one, but I've never searched for one. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. I think it's going to cut really well. It's got a very nice factory edge. This is sticky sharp. Yeah, I can't wait. I also can't wait to give it away to one of the people that pitched in. Someone's going to get an Arius for $20. It's unbelievable. If you missed out on this one, don't worry. We're going to do another one. It's not going to be another Arius, but we're going to take a vote and see which knife we're gonna buy next as a group. It's been going really well. This is the second time we've done it. We did a Herman Sting the first time, and this time we did the Arius. Next time might be a Grimsmo, something like that. Maybe a Holt, something very nice. So yeah, stay tuned to my Instagram and YouTube page, and you know, so that you know when the next one's happening. Really quick, I didn't really talk about the drop shutness yet. It's about it's as drop shut as you could ever want. You know, I mean, unbelievable. It also doesn't feel like it's falls shut in the sense that it's loose in the pivot. You know, some knives fall like, it's hard to explain. It falls with a solidity in the pivot. Is I think the best way that I can really describe it. It is so smooth, unbelievably smooth. Really fun to flick. I'm gonna miss flicking this. Now my one. Okay, I have two things that I don't love about the Arius. One is the size. I think it's a little big for me and for my tastes. I prefer a little smaller of a knife. This is pretty big. Let's do some quick size comparisons so you can get an idea of how big. Let's get out a Shaman. It is not a whole lot bigger than the Shaman, but a little bit longer. Let's get out the American-made 8020, a big knife. A little bigger than the Arius there. XM18. Yep, it's bigger than the XM18. Let's do some smaller ones. We can do a classic Ontario rat. We can do a Mannix. I'm just doing a lot here so we can make sure that everyone has at least one of these knives. So we have your Praxis, about the same size. It's big. It's freaking, it's big. And I generally like a smaller knife. Now the next thing is, this is not a choke up spot. It's too small to be choked up here. You can put your finger in there, but you're on the cutting edge. You can kind of do this kind of thing, but that's useless. So you're forced to hold it back here. Now this is a little far away from the cutting edge. I like to be, the McNeese is a good example of not having a choke up spot, but still being close enough to the edge. So I feel perfectly good right here. No choke up spot, but the edge is right there. This one, I just feel a little pushed back from it, I wish I could be like at least right here. Now they do make flipperless versions of the Arius and the mini Arius. And if I were to search one out and buy one for myself, that's the route I would go. In fact, as I, save up and start gearing towards buying my own Arius, which I plan to do, it's going to be a mini one. Preferably, hopefully, a flipperless mini one. Because I feel like that's the best version of the knife for me. It's a little smaller, and I'll be able to choke up, which are my two main kind of issues with the knife. Not issues, but things that I wish were different for me. Now, keep in mind, that's just me. You could have bigger hands. You could not care if you're back away from the edge. A multitude of things, but that's my opinion on the knife. That being said, this thing is unbelievably nice. It's kind of a cool mix between a luxury item and a working tool. It feels really solid and ready to cut, ready to work, but also like just a luxury, just expensive, very nice piece. It's both things, which is really cool. So that's about it. Stay tuned for the cut test. It'll be, from when this video drops, probably a couple days. There you go. Please like the video before you head out. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.